So in this video I'm going to be 3D printing a classical statue to use it for my diorama. I got it for free online from a group called Print the World. It's a fantastic group of people from around the world who 3D scan statues and sculptures and all other kinds of artifacts and put them up online as STL files for free on my mini factory. I think it's amazing, both for us terrain makers, as well as a fantastic heritage and educational tool, so big hats off to these folks. So for the diorama, I wanted a statue of a real-world philosopher to be looking down at the terrible carnage of the dark future, both from a pretentious arty standpoint, but also to provide the viewer with something somewhat recognisable to tell them that this is on Earth. For this, I chose this statue of an unknown Greek cynic philosopher. I scaled it down a little and went about 3D printing. I printed this on my Elegoo Mars 2. I started by levelling the build plate and filling the vat with resin. Always make sure you're wearing gloves for resin and a mask. Fumes aren't great for your lungs, and uncured resin is best kept off your skin. Not only is it potentially harmful, but it's also an absolute pain in the arse to get off your hands. After the print is finished, simply scrape it off the build plate and wash it with isopropanol. I don't have a fancy wash and cure machine, so I just use a mason jar. Once it's clean, it gets a dunk in hot water to soften it up a little, and then peeled away from the supports, which is always incredibly satisfying. Then, it's into the curing chamber for a few minutes. This one I got off Amazon for about 30 quid. It's just some UV lights and a turntable. You don't need it, but it's better than the foil-lined box and UV torch I was using before. You can also leave prints in the sun, but in the UK that's not often an option. As you can see, you can hardly tell when it's working. I'm going to be trying a marble painting technique I've seen for the first time. Using my airbrush, we spray progressively lighter and smaller patches of greens and turquoise to create a mottled effect. This is going to be the dark veining colours for the marble. You can use others, I'm just using green for this example. You could absolutely do this with rattle cans or even sponges, and the more variation you get, the better the effect will be. Once the mottled effect is done, we can seal it with gloss varnish. This will give it a lovely gloss finish of marble, and it will also stop the masking we're about to do from sticking. I didn't wait long enough for most of these steps, which will come back to bite me later on, so it's very important to be a lot more patient than me. So for the masking, to give it its nice natural pattern, we're going to be using baby wipes. These are great because the fabric is really stretchy, but not very elastic, so it won't spring back. That means we can tease the fibres out to create patterns almost web-like, to create the marble pattern. I dried off one with a hairdryer and then teased out the pattern before taping it to the statue. Now this technique is mostly for flat surfaces, like a wall or a base. It doesn't work amazingly for 3D objects, so in future I'm just going to do it one side at a time. Once the mask is in place, it's important that it doesn't move, so secure it in place with some tape, or blue tack, or anything else you've got to hand. Again with the airbrush, we're spraying progressively lighter grey in smaller patches to create a mottled appearance. As with before, the more variation you put in, the better, but if you want a simpler appearance, or you don't have an airbrush, you can always just use rattle cans for this step. Now as I said before, it's very important to allow the layers to fully dry before taking off the baby wipe. Otherwise you can get tearing like I got on mine, where sections, when you're pulling it away, they tear out big chunks of paint with them, creating these hard edges and holes in the colour. On top of this, I didn't let the gloss varnish dry completely, so it's also holding onto a few of the fibres from the baby wipe. So I had to do a bit of touching up with my greys and a brush to fix some of this up, and with some of the unfixable bits, I just covered it with weathering. Before weathering though, it gets another coat of gloss varnish to really sell it as marble, and also to seal it. To add a layer of grime, we're once again turning towards oils. This time a combination of brown and black to create the impression of millennia of grime. This is applied as an overall wash. Once it's mostly dry, we can begin removing it from the surfaces with cotton buds soaked in mineral spirits. I do this with vertical strokes to create streaks where it's not entirely removed. I take some time to get it to the point I'm happy with. You can add it and remove it as much as you want at this stage. This last stage is to really bring it into the scene, and also to cover a few of the last mistakes with blood. For this, I use blood from the blood god from Citadel. Now I want to create a really big splatter. To do this, we get a big glob of it on an old brush, and then placing it close to our mouth, we can blow sharply to get a good violent splatter. You could also do this with an airbrush if you can control the pressure right, but I'd already put it away. The size of the splatter will depend on how hard you blow it, as well as how much is on the brush. Overall, I think the technique for marble works better on flatter surfaces, but I've learned a bunch and I'll probably try this again on future projects, but I'm happy with how it turned out. I'm mostly happy that I was also able to save it. Make sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe, and check out Scan the World and My Mini Factory. There's a massive amount available to you, and these guys also do fantastic work.